Q Review Print Speaking to the Blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @CuneReview, that is @CuandReview. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cunereview.com. That is INFORMATION@CuandReview.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 16th of October 2024. From the news section. Aberdeen Childline Counsellor to climb to Everest Base Camp. This article was written by Josh Carmichael and it's being read by me, Corey. An Aberdeen child counsellor is climbing to one of the world's highest points to raise money for the NSPCC. Childline counsellor Pauline McGowan is attempting to climb to Mount Everest Base Camp next month as part of a fundraiser for the organisation she volunteers for. The 61-year-old, who is also a nurse for NHS Grampian, will head to Nepal in the next few weeks and will embark on the challenge throughout November. The Keen Hill walker will be joined by her friend, Cindy Astray. I think the first name is spelled Sinde and the second name is Astrea, who is a teacher at Aberdeen Grammar School. Pauline, who lives in Inch, says she is no stranger to the importance of Childline, having been a counsellor for the service in Aberdeen for around 4.5 years. Once the pair make it to base camp, they will decide if they feel up to going any higher. They will be setting off for Nepal later this month and will be there throughout November. Pauline, who is a nurse with NHS Grampian, said, "I'm excited to get there, but I'm also feeling some anxiety. The first few days will be all about acclimatising ourselves to the conditions. I have been climbing Munros since I was 18, but this is something different altogether. Obviously there is the lack of oxygen element, but we will also be getting used to less everyday comforts, such as running water. We are both Keen Hill walkers, so from there we decided to take it to the next level and challenge ourselves. We're going to be joined by a small group of hikers and a Sherpa, so that will help a bit with the nerves." Pauline described volunteering for Childline as one of the best decisions she has ever made. She added, "A lot of my friends have said they notice I'm a lot happier since joining Childline, and that's largely because I'm part of a great team. Going into the Childline office in Aberdeen is always a joy. We do have some serious and distressing calls with young people, but ultimately I love talking to the children, and I don't regret volunteering with Childline at all. I find it so rewarding." Anyone interested in donating to the pair's fundraiser can visit their Just Giving page. To access the Just Giving page, the easiest way would be to go to Google and type in Just Giving Pauline McGowan. That's PAULINE McGowan. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Josh Carmichael, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 16th of October 2024. From the news section. Attempted dog theft and assault on man in Whitburn. This article was written by Josh Carmichael and it's being read by me, Corey. West Lothian police are on the hunt for two men after they attempted to steal a man's dog in Whitburn. Police are appealing for information to help with their investigation after the incident, which happened in the Rig House View area of the town. A 40-year-old man was walking in an alleyway in the area at around 6:40 p.m. on Tuesday the 15th of October, when two men assaulted him and tried to steal his dog before running off into Pokemet Road. The two men are described as being around 20 years old, wearing all dark clothing and speaking with Scottish accents. After the assault, the victim was treated by the Scottish Ambulance Service in his home. Now, police who say the suspects turned left on Pokemet Road are looking for local doorbell video footage or any residents who saw the two men. Detective Constable Lynn Miles of Livingston CID said, "This was a frightening experience for the victim, so it is vital that we establish exactly what happened and trace the two men responsible. I would like to speak to anyone who was in the area at the time who saw or heard anything suspicious. Also, anyone with private CCTV, doorbell footage or dashcam is urged to review the footage and bring anything significant to our attention. If you think you can help, please contact us via 101, quoting incident number 2916. That number again for the incident number is 2916 of the 15th of October. Or you can call Crime Stoppers anonymously on 0800 555 111. That phone number again for Crime Stoppers, which will allow you to call anonymously, is 0800 555 111. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Josh Carmichael, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 16th of October 2024. From the news section. Man dies and two taken to hospital after Ayrshire crash. This article was written by Josh Carmichael, and it's being read by me, Corey. One man has died and two others taken to hospital following a two-vehicle crash in Ayrshire on Tuesday. The incident, which involved a silver Honda Civic and a white Mercedes B-Class, took place near Largs on the A769 Largs to Kilbirnie Road at around 5:10 p.m. Emergency services attended, and the 22-year-old driver of the Honda Civic was pronounced dead at the scene. The passenger of the Honda, also aged 22, was taken to Queen Elizabeth University Hospital in Glasgow with injuries that are described as serious but not life-threatening. The 63-year-old man of the Mercedes was taken to University Hospital Cross House near Kilmarnock for assessment. Sergeant Brian Simpson from the Ayrshire Road Policing Unit said, "Our thoughts are with the family and friends of the man who died at this difficult time. Our investigation is ongoing, and I am appealing to anyone who witnessed the crash and who has not already spoken to officers to get in touch. I would also ask anyone who was driving in the area around that time, who may have dashcam footage or who may have seen the cars prior to the crash, to contact us." The road was closed for just over 9 hours while investigations were carried out and reopened around 2:40 a.m. on Wednesday. Anyone with information about the incident is asked to contact Police Scotland on 101, quoting reference 2509. Again, that quoting reference is 2509 of October 15th, 2024. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Josh Carmichael, and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 16th of October 2024. From the news section. UK inflation falls further than expected in new ONS figures. This article was written by Henry Saker Clark, and it's being read by me, Corey. Inflation dropped below the Bank of England's target rate last month for the first time since April of 2021, according to new figures. The Office for National Statistics, ONS, said Consumer Price Index (CPI) inflation fell to 1.7% in September from 2.2% in August. It was lower than expected, with analysts having predicted a reading of 1.9% for the month. The September figure is used by the government to decide a number of tax and spending changes for next year, and means UK state benefits will rise by 1.7% next year. It also confirms that state pensions will increase by 4.1% next April, due to the triple lock policy. ONS Chief Economist Grant Fitzner said, inflation eased in September to its lowest annual rate in over 3 years. Lower airfares and petrol prices were the biggest driver for this month's fall. Darren Jones, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, said, it will be welcome news for millions of families that inflation is below 2%. However, there is still more to do to protect working people, which is why we are forced to bring back growth and restoring economic stability to deliver on the promise of change. The ONS revealed that motor fuels and lubricant prices were significantly lower, dropping by 10.4% in September compared with the same month a year earlier. Air travel costs also dragged down on the inflation rate, as lower airfares due to post-summer sales helped to drive a 5% fall in the category. However, households witnessed the first acceleration in food and non-alcohol drink inflation since March 2023 last month. Food and drink inflation rose by 1.9% for the month from 1.3% in August, amid stronger price increases for milk, cheese, eggs and fruit. Megan Davies from the Stop the Squeeze campaign said, lower inflation means nothing to those heading into the winter with cold homes and empty cupboards. We know that the price of essentials like energy, food and rent are still sky high, and that for so many families, the money coming in still isn't stretching far enough. We need a future-proof cost of living plan that gets to the root of the problem, and this budget is a chance for the government to take decisive action. That means boosting incomes, ensuring essentials are affordable, and fixing our broken tax system by bringing in higher taxes on wealth. Neil Rudge, Chief Banking Officer for Commercial at Shawbrook, said, the general price of goods continued to ease/stabilise in September, edging closer to the Bank of England's 2% target. This is encouraging news for SME leaders who thrive in a stable macro environment. Whether this will prompt the Bank of England to cut rates more aggressively, as Governor Bailey hinted earlier this month, remains to be seen. However, with prices moving in the right direction, it's likely only a matter of time before borrowing costs fall further. That said, small businesses will have plenty on their minds with the upcoming budget looming. Both owners and employees will be watching closely for any announcements that could affect their operations. At the same time, caution remains in the outlook for energy prices, especially with rising geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. Any disruption in the energy markets could lead to renewed inflationary pressures, posing additional challenges. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Henry Saker Clark, and it was read by me, Corey.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday, the 16th of October 2024, from the Voices section. Trump versus Harris. Last stretch and still too close to call. This article is by Alison Rowett. At age 78, it is late in the day for Donald Trump to be considering a career change, but let no one doubt the man's willingness to serve his supporters in any capacity he can. This week he has tried his hand at being a movie critic, with his first gig a review of The Apprentice, a warts and more warts dramatization of his early property mogul and playboy years in New York. A cheap, defamatory and politically disgusting hatchet job, said one D. Trump Esquire in a quote surely destined to go on the movie posters. He was less successful in his role as a paramedic at one of his rallies in Pennsylvania on Monday night. No sooner had one person fainted and had to be stretchered out of the too-warm hall than another person keeled over. Would anyone else like to faint? He asked the crowd, perhaps treating the incident with more merriment than it deserved. After that, he gave up on the Q&A session and suggested organizers play music instead, thus leaving ABC News to report that the former president stood on stage for nearly 45 minutes, swaying to several songs on his playlist as the crowd sang and danced along. Just when you think you are through the looking glass with this presidential contest, along comes another push deep into crazy territory. How does a country get back on track after an election that makes duck soup look like the West Wing? It is testimony to American preparedness that some have been thinking ahead to what happens after the polls close on Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. One might take comfort from the fact, if only the visions of what is to come were not quite so terrifying. Showing now on BBC iPlayer is the documentary War Game. Last year, on the anniversary of the January the 6th Capitol riots, filmmakers Jesse Moss and Tony Gerber brought together former government officials, ex-military personnel, and politicians to role-play, or war game, a scenario in which history repeated itself in 2024. Only this time, the mob was better organized, its ranks swollen by serving soldiers who had infiltrated the army to push a white supremacist cause. How might democracy fare against that level of attack? At another time, or in another place, it might have been easy to dismiss such a scenario as a liberal fever dream, a far-fetched imagining more suited to a TV drama. Yet, the more one studies the 2021 invasion of the Capitol, the more incredible it seems that greater carnage did not ensue. In some cases, only a door or a good Samaritan stood between someone living and dying. The producers of War Games set up two teams or cells, blue, good guys, and red, bad. Leading the Blues in the role of president was Steve Bullock, the real former Democrat governor of Montana. In the scenario, he has won the election by 0.6%. Again, this might seem hard to believe unless you have been reading the Trump-Harris polls. The red team featured members of the Vet Voice Foundation, a group of former soldiers. They were head and shoulders above the blue team when it came to getting their message out, tactics, and taking control of a fast-moving situation. Compared to them, the Blues were Bambis in the headlights. If nothing else, War Game was an eerily accurate study of how meetings work. Who takes charge? Who hangs back? Who goes furthest quickest? You won't believe the suggestion from one retired general. Now and then the directors would up the ante, adding to the pressure on the Blues. Looming over everything was the Insurrection Act, legislation allowing the president to deploy military force to quell a rebellion or other serious disorder. Would it be used? Decide for yourself how credible war game is. Other scenarios are available, and there will be even more of them as the election nears. A mini-industry is flourishing on the back of people's fears, and both candidates are not above stoking the fires. Most recently, Donald Trump has spoken of using military force against the enemies within, while Harris has accused him of being increasingly unstable and unhinged, adding that a second Trump term would be a huge risk for America and dangerous. Trump made his comments on Fox News, his media home. Harris will have her first interview with the network on Wednesday night, an event generating almost as much excitement as the pair's televised debate. From the moment Joe Biden stepped back, the Republicans have been waiting for Harris to waffle her way into trouble. Thus far, she has not given them the satisfaction, though she came close to serving one of her word salads in a recent 60 Minutes interview. The producers have since been accused of tightening Harris's answers, which they deny. Even the interviews about rows are causing rows. Candidates have been stoking fears about their opponents and offering reassurances about themselves for as long as there have been presidential elections. Yet it is rare for two candidates to do so much of the former and so little of the latter. As to what will happen after a winner emerges, and assuming the result is not challenged, what can America and the rest of the world expect from the 47th President of the United States? Trump is again playing the fear card, with talk of a purge of officials, mass deportations of illegal immigrants, and the general settling of scores among the first items on his to-do list. Reality might blunt those ambitions, as happened in the first Trump term. And Harris? Who knows? Without any clear positions of her own, she comes across as the continuity candidate, which would be fine if voters wanted 4 more years of Biden, but they did not. It is also worth saying that even if Harris is interviewed every day from here till the election, she will still be the least scrutinized candidate in living memory, which brings its own concerns. 2 candidates, a few weeks left, and a lot of unknowns. Chief among them whether the election will be over when it is over. I'm making one prediction, and one prediction only. It is not going to be dull. That article was by Alison Rowett. This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday the 16th of October 2024 from the business section. Bellway eyes growth in house sales after mortgage rate cuts. This article is by Mark Williamson. House-building giant Bellway has provided further evidence of the strength of the recent upturn in the market after seeing profits plunge in the latest financial year amid challenging trading conditions. The company saw profits fall by 57% in the year to July 31st, as increases in interest rates weighed on demand for new homes. Bellway is a major player in Scotland. It is marketing 22 developments across the country's central belt. Chief Executive Jason Honeyman said the Newcastle-based company has achieved a resilient performance in the face of the headwinds affecting the sector. A series of house builders have complained about the problems that followed the Bank of England's decision to increase interest rates repeatedly from December 2021 to tackle inflation. Bellway highlighted the improvement in the market, which accelerated in the second half of the latest year after a fall in the inflation rate boosted hopes the bank would loosen policy. These were fulfilled in August when the bank cut its key interest rate for the first time since the pandemic to 5% from 5.25%. Bellway said customer demand through the second half benefited from a moderation in mortgage interest rates, which has eased affordability pressures and supported an increase in reservations. The company noted that customer confidence has also been boosted by the fall in the rate of consumer price inflation and an increase in wages. Mr. Honeyman said the improvement in conditions increased directors' confidence in Bellway's long-term growth prospects amid strong expected demand for homes. He noted the new Labour government has promised to reform the planning system south of the border to make it easier for firms to develop sites. Ministers hope this will help to close the current gap between supply and demand. Russ Mould, investment director at investment platform operator AJ Bell, said, "The stars are finally aligning for the house building sector. The new government has pro-housing policies with a promise to relax the planning system, which has caused hold-ups and headaches in recent years. Interest rates are coming down, which makes mortgages more affordable, and property prices are strengthening." Control of planning issues in Scotland is reserved to the Scottish Government. In the Programme for Government, published last month, First Minister John Swinney said his administration would ensure the planning system responds to the housing emergency in the country. Mr. Mould noted that hopes of further cuts in interest rates were boosted after official figures showed the UK economy stagnated in June and July, although it expanded in August. It believes Bellway is well placed to capitalise on strong demand for homes after building up a big land bank. It is marketing homes on developments across the central belt of Scotland, from Ayrshire to Fife. Matt Britsman, senior equity analyst at the Hargreaves Lansdowne investment business, noted, "Bellway's long-term strength is volume, and the land bank is well prepped for higher output. This should keep the name in good standing as the market recovers." The £1.4 billion purchase of the Carla housing business by international investors last month signalled confidence in the outlook for the housing market. Carla has a strong presence in Scotland. It began life as the City of Aberdeen Land Association. In the programme it published last month, the Scottish Government said it would support planning authorities to allocate a pipeline of land for new homes and promote consistent monitoring of its delivery. It will work to extend the services offered by a new planning hub to support housing developments. Bellway made £226 million profit before tax in the year to July 31st, compared with £532 million in the preceding year. The total number of houses it sold fell by 30% to 7,654 from 10,945. The average selling price fell slightly to £307,909 from £310,306. Total revenues fell 30% to £2.38 billion from £3.4 billion. The company has seen interest in its developments increase strongly in the current year. It noted, in the 9 weeks since the 1st of August and against a weak comparative, the private reservation rate increased by 48.5% to 147 per week. The company said it expects to maintain the average number of sales outlets at 245. Bellway acquired 27 sites for a total cost of £345 million in the year to July 31st. In the preceding year, it bought 35 sites for £378 million. Bellway shares closed up 8%, 254 pence at 3,306 pence. That article was by Mark Williamson. This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday the 16th of October 2024 from the business section. Merck to invest millions in expansion of Livingston facility. This article is by Christy Dorsey. German pharma and technology giant Merck has announced a €5 million, £4.2 million investment in Scotland that will create further jobs at its diagnostics and blood typing facility in Livingston. The group says the investment will increase production capacity of its diagnostic monoclonal antibodies, MABs, by more than a third. The site is already the world's largest manufacturer of MABs for blood typing diagnosis, producing approximately 25 tons of antibodies per year. The expansion will also initially create 10 new jobs, bringing Merck's workforce in Scotland to more than 750 employees. Merck's legacy spans over 33 years here in Scotland, and Livingston has quickly become the centre of excellence for diagnostic MABs, said Jessica Copeland, Head of Diagnostics and Regulated Materials at Merck Life Sciences. This investment enables us to increase our manufacturing capacity for products that are at the forefront of diagnostics, putting us in a unique position to support customers with groundbreaking work. The announcement follows last year's €3 million investment in Livingston as part of the design, development and commercialisation of a novel diagnostic quality control kit for blood typing analyzers. Also, last year, Merck expanded its molecular biology and sequence testing business in Glasgow with the €35 million development of a state-of-the-art 1,200 square metres biosafety testing facility to create 500 new jobs across Glasgow and Stirling. We have the market's largest portfolio of monoclonal antibodies for blood typing, said Adrian Burkett, Head of Operations at Livingston. We also have a diverse range of services and products, and blood typing and diagnostics is an area which thrives year on year. I'd like to thank the team at Merck Livingston for their continued hard work and dedication. Their consistent delivery for the company has resulted in this further investment. It's a proud day for us all here in Merck Livingston. That article was by Christy Dorsey. This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday the 16th of October 2024 from the business section. Scottish country hotel near historic Clan Castle for sale. This article is by Brian Donnelly. A substantial former corn mill that has been converted into a hotel and restaurant has been brought to the market. The building dates from the early 1800s, with the initial conversion made in the 1950s. The Old Mill Inn is a few minutes from a historic castle originally built by the Clan Brodie. Purchased by the current owners in 2018, the business was in need of renovation and refurbishment, which the sellers undertook over a period of months. The business is now presented to the market as a fully licensed boutique country hotel with 5 ensuite rooms, an award-winning AA Rosette restaurant, and a self-contained 3-bedroom owner's apartment, agent the business partnership said. The Old Mill Inn enjoys an excellent trading location just off the A96 at Brodie. It sits 3 miles from the town of Forres and around 23 miles away from the city of Inverness. The historic Brodie Castle and Brodie Country Fair retail outlet are within a few minutes' walk. The agent added, the business is also located on the world-famous Speyside Whisky Trail, which brings many tourists to the area year-round. In the current owner's tenure, the business has, in a relatively short period of time, gained an excellent reputation for both the standard of accommodation and the quality of the food, as evidenced by the multiple AA Rosette and 4 Gold Star restaurant, along with the many 5-star reviews on TripAdvisor and Booking.com. Trading with 5 high-standard, boutique-letting bedrooms and an intimate and charming restaurant, the business trades profitably and closes briefly in January for maintenance. The agent said the owner's accommodation is also a very attractive feature and of a size rarely seen in a property of this stature. Comprising of 3 family bedrooms, a dining kitchen and lounge, this area is self-contained and would provide flexible trading options depending on new owners' personal circumstances. The Old Mill Inn is presented to the market in walk-in condition and offers a prestigious property and excellent family-run business, which effortlessly blends high-quality service and charm with the personal touch. The Old Mill Inn freehold is available at an asking price of $495,000. That article was by Brian Donnelly.
From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 20th of October, from the news section, I still feel we're lucky. Sir Chris Hoy shares his cancer diagnosis. Report by Mark McDougall. Sir Chris Hoy has confirmed that he is suffering from terminal cancer and has been given 2 to 4 years to live. The Edinburgh-born cyclist announced back in February that he had cancer, but has now revealed that he will die from the illness, given details of his diagnosis. He had initially gone for tests on a shoulder he thought he had hurt while weightlifting, only to be told the news that it was cancer after a tumour was discovered. Further tests found that it had started in his prostate, and there were also tumours in his pelvis, hip, spine and rib, and that it was stage 4. And just like that, I learned how I will die, says the Olympic hero in an interview with the Sunday Times. Sir Chris has written a book about the last year as he looks to tell his own story, and he was effectively forced into announcing his diagnosis in February. A friend of his wife Sarah had received a call from a journalist asking if it was true that Sir Chris had a terminal illness. It was then decided to go public, but they kept most of the details to themselves at that stage. It would have been easy to be angry, and at the time there was frustration, but he quickly got his head around it and decided there was no point in wasting time finding out who might have leaked the news. He said, "It would have happened at some point and there was a relief with it. It was awful because that Pandora's box is opened and you can't shut it, but it was like a pressure release." With 6 gold medals at the Olympics as well as a silver, 25 World Championship medals, 4 Commonwealths, and just the 1 European Championship bronze to his name, it's no surprise that Sir Chris is a national treasure when it comes to sport. His success on the track is known, and he's now written a book about his experiences with cancer, which he is hoping that can help someone, even if it's just one person. He added, "I think it's important to show how bad it was. Hand on heart, I'm pretty positive most of the time, and I have a genuine happiness. This is bigger than the Olympics. It's bigger than anything. This is about appreciating life and finding joy. There's so much positivity that can come out of this from all angles. I'm just really excited that this book hopefully will be able to help people." Sir Chris, who married his wife Sarah in 2010, has 2 kids who are aged 10 and 7. Shortly after he was diagnosed with cancer, there was bad news for his wife too, as it was revealed she had an aggressive form of multiple sclerosis, which needed immediate treatment. For the cyclist, who had been trying to be as positive as possible about his own illness, he admits that was the moment he really felt like he was struggling. He said, "It was the closest I've come to why me? Just what? What's going on here? It didn't seem real. It was such a huge blow when you're already reeling. You think nothing could possibly get worse. You literally feel like you're at rock bottom, and then you find out, oh no, you've got further to fall. It was brutal. They also had to tell their kids about his disease, and he looked to assure his son that he would be around for a long while yet when asked if he was going to die. His positivity continues to shine through, and despite both he and his wife having serious illnesses, he's still looking on the bright side. He continued, I still feel like we're lucky. When you realise, God, this has been going on since the beginning of time. As unnatural as it feels, this is nature. You know, we were all born and we all die, and this is just part of the process. As part of his book, he's also doing an audio version which he admits will be a message to his kids when he is gone, and that is certainly a difficult thing to do. He added, the last chapter is basically where I'm writing to the kids, you know, my message to them. And reading the words out loud, you have to connect emotionally. You've got to actually read in a way that means something, but the risk is getting too close to it, because you're suddenly thinking, these are the words that my kids will listen to when I'm gone, and that is, without doubt, the hardest thing I've ever done. Even in his own battles, though, he's still wanting to make life better for other people. When asked what his hopes were from telling his own and difficult story, he replied, changing the perception of stage 4, that could be a really powerful thing. And that report was written by Mark McDougall and read by me, Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 20th of October, from the news section, amber flood warnings in place across Scotland due to Storm Ashley. Report by Mark McDougall. Flood warnings have been put in place across Scotland as the country prepares to be hit by Storm Ashley. It comes as gusts of up to 80 miles per hour could hit the country, and there are fears flooding could follow on Sunday and Monday throughout Scotland. The Highlands and Islands are the most likely to be hit with amber warnings in place for Caithness and Sutherland, Skye and Lochaber, Wester Ross and Western Isles on Sunday. SCPA is also warning that the west of Scotland could also be affected, as could places such as Aberdeen, Dundee and Perth. It has put yellow warnings in place for Aberdeenshire and Aberdeen City, Argyll and Bute, Ayrshire and Arran, Central, Dumfries and Galloway, Dundee and Angus, Easter Ross and Great Glen, Fife, Findhorn near Moray and Speyside, Orkney, Shetland, Tayside and West Central Scotland. Amber warnings mean flooding affecting parts of the community, danger to life, and damage to buildings and disruption to infrastructure are all likely rather than possible when it's a yellow warning. On its website, a statement read, coastal flooding impacts are much likely around much of the coast towards the times of high tide. The period of greatest risk is around high tide between Sunday evening and early Monday morning, when significant coastal impacts are likely in the northwest of Scotland, including the Western Isles, and could occur elsewhere. And that report was by Mark McDougall. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 20th of October, from the news section, Child benefit cap leaves children without food, report finds. By political correspondent Rebecca McCurdy. The 2-child benefit cap is causing children to go without basic needs including food, new research suggests. A report commissioned for the Wheatley Group, a leading housing management firm, urged the UK government to drop the limit in the upcoming budget. Research conducted by Unity Consulting Scotland found the cap disproportionately and negatively impacts larger families, leaving people to choose between heating and eating. More than 1,000 families in Wheatley Group housing were likely to be impacted by the cap, which prevents parents claiming universal credit or child tax credit for a third child in most circumstances. Around 110 Scottish parents fully engaged with the survey, with evidence suggesting children are missing out on food, heating and clothes, while death is endemic amongst the impacted families. The survey found 28.3% of respondents said they felt their children were missing out on food because of the two-child benefit cap, while 36.8% said heating was impacted and 61% said they could not afford to buy new clothes. It also found that impacted children missed out on after-school activities, with 70.8% of parents stating this, while 70.8% also said occasional treats were missed. One parent said she had to consider whether she could afford a third child after discovering she was pregnant. Our finances were a big question on whether to continue with a pregnancy or not, if I'm honest, she said. The report concluded, a consequence, and arguably an intention of the two-child policy is to limit the number of children families have. Yet, here in Scotland, due to demographic challenges, there is a strong argument that we need to actually encourage families to have more children. Steve Henderson, chief executive of the Weekly Group, said, the welfare benefits system is a vital safety net for many of our tenants, especially during these challenging times. He added, the two-child cap, introduced in 2017, has had a profound impact on families across the UK. By limiting the amount of child tax credit or universal credit that parents can claim, it has pushed many families deeper into poverty. Data shows that removing the cap could lift 500,000 children out of poverty, highlighting the urgent need for change. At Wheatley, we see firsthand the struggles our tenants face due to this cap, and we're calling for a more compassionate and supportive welfare system. Chancellor Rachel Reeves is due to set out the UK government's budget on October 30th. However, senior Labour politicians have said the government is not currently in a place to scrap the cap. It was introduced in 2017 and has specific exemptions in place for twins and proving the child was born as a result of rape. The Child Poverty Action Group in Scotland estimates scrapping the cap would cost an estimated £1.3 billion. However, the charity said it would lift 250,000 children in the UK out of poverty, including 15,000 in Scotland. Satwat Rehman, chief executive of One Parent Families Scotland, said, the Westminster two-child limit policy is a stark reminder that economic austerity often targets the most vulnerable, trapping larger families in poverty and stripping children of the right to a fair start in life. The policy not only deepens immediate financial hardship, but also sows the seed for long-term inequality, as it also affects children's well-being and the opportunity to achieve their potential. The parents who have contributed to this research, already stretched to their limits, are now pushed to the brink, struggling to provide basic necessities for their children. Immediate action in the UK budget to abolish the two-child limit is essential to prevent further harm and ensure that all families have the support they need. A UK government spokesperson, no child should be in poverty. That's why our ministerial task force is looking at all available levers across government as it develops an ambitious strategy to tackle child poverty. Tackling child poverty is a core part of our mission to give everyone opportunity and grow the economy. Alongside extending the Household Support Fund to help struggling families this winter, we are also taking bold action to support people into work to spread opportunity and prosperity to all. An article was written by Rebecca McCurdy and read by me, Ian McKenna. From the Herald Scotland, Sunday the 20th of October, from the news section, woman killed in fatal Ayrshire crash named as 27-year-old. Report by Mark McDougall. A woman who died in a fatal road crash in Ayrshire has been named as 27-year-old Alana Muir from Darvel. The incident happened on Thursday, October 17 at 11:05am on the A71 between Newmilns and Darvel. The crash involved a red Ford Focus Z-Tech and a silver Mercedes Vito, with Alana pronounced dead on the scene. Emergency services had attended and a 24-year-old man, who was a passenger in a Ford that Alana was driving, was taken to Queen Elizabeth University Hospital in Glasgow with non-life-threatening injuries. The driver of the Mercedes, a 52-year-old man, was taken to Crosshouse University Hospital in Kilmarnock with non-life-threatening injuries. Sergeant Martin Cunningham said, "Our thoughts remain with Alana's family and friends at this very difficult time. Our inquiries are ongoing, and we are asking anyone who saw what happened to please get in touch. In particular, if you were driving in the area at the time, please check your dashcam to see if you have anything that could help with our investigation. Anyone who can assist is asked to call Police Scotland on 101, quoting incident number 1148 of Thursday, 17th October 2024. And that report was by Mark McDougall."
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 21st of October 2024, from the Voices section. Check your prejudice. Drug rooms are the start of something new. Article written by Mark Smith. Today's the day, or at least it should have been. The UK's first drug consumption room was due to open in Glasgow this week, but it's been pushed back, we're told, for more checks on the building. And I'm sure it'll be fine and everything, but I worry, because the idea of consumption rooms and getting them right is serious. It matters. It matters not only because we need to get facilities such as consumption rooms working for the people who are going to use them. We need to get them working for the rest of us as well, so we can change the way we deal with the consumption, the use and the misuse of drugs in this country. It's something we've been getting wrong for a long time, and it's not like we can't see it, because it's there, in front of us. Take a look. The number of drug deaths in Scotland, the widespread use of drugs in prison, the link between drugs and crime, the very visible, particularly if you live in Glasgow, evidence of risky drug use, the fact that we've been cracking down on drugs for the best part of a century, and yet still their use grows. Look at all of this, and tell me the current policies are working. Consumption rooms have the potential to change all of that, or at least some of it. What they'll do is allow people to take illegal drugs at any point from 9 in the morning until 9 at night, under the supervision of staff. The users will take their own drugs in and inject them in a room designed for the purpose, which is not an easy concept to accept, I admit. We're used to drug use being hidden, or relatively hidden, and shameful, or relatively shameful, so the idea of people going into an organised public place to take drugs takes some getting used to. The plans for the building show a row of booths, clinical and clean and organised, like a library or a social security office, and you can't help asking, isn't this encouraging something bad? The answer is that we don't have much choice, and that we're long past the point where discouraging something bad has an effect, if it ever did. For a long time, public policy was, still is to a large extent, based on the concept of punishment. But as David Strang of Scotland's Drug Death Task Force has pointed out, it's hard to punish people out of addiction. In fact, the punishment often makes things worse. Prison is very likely to expose you to even more drugs, and then tip you back into the situation that got you into prison in the first place. Some with more right-wing views on crime and justice would suggest the answer is that we haven't applied the punishment hard enough, but that assumes we have the resources to tackle and reduce illegal drug use. We don't. It also fails to acknowledge, and it's really time we did, that lots of people use and are using some illegal drugs without it having a profoundly negative effect on their lives. What's really in it for the rest of us to make them stop? And what makes us think we could? Let's focus instead on the people who are suffering serious harm. That, in essence, is what the drug consumption room is all about. The staff will provide clean equipment, they'll promote safe injecting techniques, and if something goes wrong, an overdose for example, they can respond there and then. This means, hopefully, that deaths will be reduced, but it may also mean the strain that chaotic drug behaviour has on the wider health services is reduced too. So there's a positive effect on the person and a positive effect on wider society. The other really critical part of the consumption room is that the staff will be able to encourage and guide people into treatment services, which are central to reducing harm. Everyone I've ever spoken to with experience of serious drugs tells me rehab is the key. I remember Darren McGarvey, for example, telling me that rehab was the moment for him that the window of recovery opened. Others have told me that rehab, although it doesn't always work of course, puts you in a controlled, supportive and helpful environment and gives you the best possible chance of recovering. Sadly, the issue with rehab is that the Scottish Government isn't spending enough on it. In fact, as they've cut into council budgets, the number of rehab beds has fallen, just as the number of deaths has risen. No coincidence. It is the importance of rehab proved by what happens when it's shut down. It is the effectiveness of rehab demonstrated by the people who are dying. I appreciate that there's still public opinion to overcome here. The new consumption room has been put on a desolate street in a poor part of Glasgow for a specific reason. As soon as something like a drug consumption room or a homeless hostel or something similar is proposed, people living nearby object because they assume it spells trouble. And to be fair, sometimes it does. But people also object when they see people doing drugs in the street or find needles lying around, and the consumption room has the potential to reduce that. We also need to take on the issue which the opposition to consumption room raises pretty clearly, which is the class bias on drugs. Middle-class people use drugs, not always but often, in a way that shields them from some of the worst effects. They keep a distance from crime and criminals. They don't have to use the drugs out on the street, and they generally have the resources to protect and help them if things go wrong. Money, friends with connections, that sort of thing. We therefore tend to judge middle-class users much less harshly, because their use does not cost us in the way that more chaotic drug use out on the street does. In other words, drug use linked to poverty. This is something I hear quite often from people when I talk to them about drugs, users as well as people who work in drug services. People who do not use drugs in the nice middle-class way are often subject to prejudice around the services that could and should help them. If you're a drug addict and you speak in a certain way, or you've got a bad attitude, or you're late for an appointment, you may have your treatment summarily withdrawn in a way that would never happen with a nice middle-class person. There's basically a higher behavioural threshold required of certain addicts, and it's part of the prejudicial, punitive approach which still dominates in our approach to drugs. The consumption room is, I hope, a small attempt to change that. Because someone is out on the street and living a chaotic life and taking drugs should not exclude them from organised, accessible health services that are designed to protect them from harm. We also know from similar services in other parts of the world that consumption rooms can improve the health and recovery of the people who use them, and that's a good thing, isn't it? Yes, consumption rooms are controversial, and yes, there will be problems with some of the people who use them, and sometimes it'll kick off. But take another look around, at the deaths, the drugs in prison, the failure of public policy, and tell me we don't need to try something different. So let's finally do it, shall we? That article was written by Mark Smith and read to you by Elizabeth. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 21st of October 2024, from the Voices section. The noisy anti-woke agenda risks normalising discrimination. Article written by Bryony Williamson. In recent years, Scotland has made significant progress towards fostering a more inclusive workforce, particularly when it comes to disability inclusion. Various policies, initiatives, and dedicated resources have helped reduce the barriers faced by disabled people seeking employment. But as political and social backlash against diversity, equity and inclusion, DEI, efforts grows louder, dismissed by some as part of an ill-defined woke agenda, this progress is under serious threat. Across the UK, we are witnessing a troubling trend where DEI roles are being defunded and people working in these areas are losing their jobs. Organisations are increasingly cutting back on diversity programmes, and the momentum that once pushed for real change is slowing down. This is a critical moment, especially for the disabled community. Scotland's disability employment gap remains wide, and the pay disparity between disabled and non-disabled workers is stark. Without sustained effort, the good work achieved over recent years could be lost. As head of DEI at Enable Works, Scotland's largest employability and DEI support service, specialising in disability and health, I've seen firsthand the positive impact these initiatives can have on disabled individuals trying to enter and be successful in the workforce. We've worked tirelessly to support those who for far too long have faced systemic discrimination in employment. Yet, as the tide turns against DEI in general, we cannot ignore the very real possibility that the vital work around disability inclusion could be left behind. The backlash against so-called woke culture and DEI initiatives often paints these efforts as unnecessary, divisive, or merely performative. The reality is quite different. DEI is not a trend. It's about fairness, opportunity, and ensuring that everyone has the chance to contribute to and benefit from our economy. In Scotland, disabled people are still far less likely to be employed than their non-disabled peers. 81% of working-age adults without disabilities had jobs, compared to just under 50% of adults with disabilities. ONS 2021. This discrepancy of 31 percentage points, called the Disability Employment Gap, is wider in Scotland than the rest of the UK. Equally concerning is the disability pay gap. In 2021, Scotland had the widest disability pay gap of all UK countries at 18.5%. This means that disabled workers not only experience discrimination when trying to access employment, but even when in employment, they earn significantly less than their non-disabled colleagues, further highlighting the barriers that disabled people face in achieving equality in the workplace. Without a robust commitment to DEI, these gaps will not just persist, but could worsen. Cutting back on DEI initiatives does not merely pause progress, it reverses it. The narrative that DEI is dispensable or irrelevant ignores the fact that these initiatives are often the only thing standing between exclusion and opportunity for many disabled individuals. Employment is more than just a job. It's about independence, dignity, and the right to participate fully in society. When DEI funding is slashed, we're not just talking about losing symbolic gestures, we're talking about people losing their chance at a better life. It's important to remember that the challenges disabled people face in the workplace didn't vanish when we started addressing them. They are still very much alive. From inaccessible workplaces to unconscious bias in recruitment, disabled individuals face barriers at every turn. What progress we have made has come from years of advocacy, policy change, and investment in DEI programs. It cannot and must not be undone. The backlash we are seeing now also threatens to normalise discrimination. By dismissing DEI as woke, we risk sending a message that equity and inclusion are negotiable, when they are in fact fundamental to a just society. It's crucial to remind ourselves that DEI is not about giving special treatment, it's about levelling the playing field. Disabled people are not asking for favours, they are asking for fairness. In the face of this anti-woke agenda, businesses and policymakers must take a stand. Abandoning DEI is not the answer. Instead, we must double down on our commitment to fostering inclusive work environments. This includes maintaining and expanding support for disabled workers, ensuring workplaces are accessible, providing reasonable adjustments, and tackling unconscious bias head-on. This is where organisations like Enable Works come in. By engaging with DEI leaders and services like ours, companies can create sustainable, long-term change that goes beyond box-ticking exercises. At Enable Works, we specialise in designing tailored strategies that help organisations integrate inclusive practices in a way that benefits both employers and employees. Our experience shows that when businesses invest in meaningful DEI initiatives, they not only bridge the disability employment and pay gaps, but also unlock the potential of a diverse workforce, boosting innovation and productivity. Through guidance and practical support, we help organisations navigate the complexities of building a truly inclusive workplace. From conducting accessibility audits and training staff on disability awareness to supporting recruitment and retention of disabled employees, our services empower businesses to break down the barriers. Now is the time for leadership. Scotland has long prided itself on being a forward-thinking, progressive nation, but that reputation means little if we allow the gains we've made in workplace inclusion to slip away. We cannot let the noise of the anti-woke movement distract us from the real issue, creating an economy where everyone has the opportunity to succeed. The disability employment gap, the disability pay gap, and the persistent discrimination that disabled people face are problems that will not fix themselves. These issues require continued focus, investment, and action. Scotland has made strides, but there is still much work to do. If we allow the anti-woke agenda to derail our DEI efforts, the progress we've made could unravel. We owe it to disabled people and to the principles of fairness and equality to ensure that doesn't happen. We cannot afford to leave anyone behind. That article was written by Bryony Williamson, Head of Diversity, Equity and Inclusion at Enable Works, and was read to you by Elizabeth.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday, the 23rd of October 2024, from the Voices section. Real living wage increase shows success for workers. This article is by Peter Kelly. Over the long decades since the UK has become an industrialised society, a fair day's wage for a fair day's work has been a central call by workers, trade unions and civil society, and they have had real successes. The real living wage movement seeks a just Scotland where every worker's wage meets their everyday needs. The need for that kind of nation is more and more evident. People don't want to live in a country with insecure work, inadequate incomes, rising child poverty, increasing reliance on food banks, and weakened communities. Supporters of the real living wage know that low pay comes at a huge cost. They know that it's simply not right that people in working households are left to deal with the huge impacts that come from struggling on an inadequate income. They know it's wrong that more than 2/3 of children in poverty in Scotland live in working households. The real living wage has today increased to £12.60 per hour in the UK. It's carefully and independently calculated to ensure that it covers the essentials of people's lives. It's higher than the UK government's legal minimum wage rates, and for many workers, that can represent the difference between getting by or going under, between thriving or just surviving. Despite challenging economic conditions, the real living wage movement is continuing to grow. A record number of employers have signed up in the past couple of years, with over 15,000 employers in the UK now committed to paying the real living wage, and that number is still rising. More than 3,750 accredited living wage employers are based here in Scotland, impacting nearly 68,000 workers in diverse sections of the economy. The leaders of all these enterprises deserve praise, thanks, and recognition for their living wage commitment. Employers have joined the real living wage movement because they recognize the business and social value of this investment in their workforce. Some 94% of employers have reported benefits from living wage accreditation, with savings on retention, recruitment, and training new staff, as well as increased staff morale. Some 86% of employers say that accreditation has enhanced their reputation, and more, living wage accreditation is becoming a key that can unlock opportunities in bids for public sector procurement and to access financial support from government. These employers are pathfinders on the way to a new kind of economy in Scotland that has community well-being and shared prosperity at its heart. The real living wage helps provide a foundation on which we can build a sustainable Scotland, free from poverty, with social, environmental and economic justice for all. Many real living wage employers are now taking further steps by signing up to living hours commitments that provide greater security to workers on flexible hours and living pensions that will give people the kind of retirement they deserve. There's still a distance we need to go together to reach the just and compassionate Scotland we all want. But the continued growth in Scotland's living wage movement shows we can get there. That article was by Peter Kelly. This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday, the 23rd of October 2024, from the Voices section. Wakey, wakey, Brexit convert Sir Keir, you should see this. This article is by Ian McConnell. What business most wants to see from the new Labour government, revealed in a survey published this week, should provide much food for thought for those who say Brexit is done. That said, thoughtfulness and reflection have appeared to be in very short supply indeed among arch-Brexiters. The survey of 502 UK business leaders, undertaken by Census Wide on behalf of Specialist Research and Development Tax Advisor Forrest Brown, showed the policy commitment from Labour that would be most valued by respondents is making the UK's relationship with the EU work better for business. The proportion of business leaders flagging this as the key policy commitment they want most from the new government is 22%. This is significantly ahead of the policies in joint second place in the most valued policy commitments league table generated by the survey responses. Stability and certainty in taxation, and reforming business rates with a new system of business property taxation, each flagged by 16% of business leaders. Next, each with 13%, are increasing investment in clean energy and workforce development, for example, working conditions and youth unemployment. Then come addressing the skills shortage by reforming the immigration point system, highlighted by 9% of respondents, and addressing the UK's ageing infrastructure, flagged by 7%. Skills shortages are, it's worth noting, in no small part the result of the UK's hard Brexit. All of the matters on the wish list communicated by the survey respondents are important for business. And this makes it all the more striking that relations with the European Union come out so far ahead. This would seem to speak volumes about the damage that has been and is being done to businesses by Brexit. The survey covered business leaders across a raft of sectors in architecture, engineering and building, arts and culture, education, finance, healthcare, human resources, information technology and telecoms, legal, manufacturing and utilities, retail, catering and leisure, sales, media and marketing, and travel and transport. Forrest Brown said, while the government ruled out rejoining the EU single market and customs union, it has promised to tear down unnecessary barriers to trade, which the survey suggests would be welcomed by many business leaders. According to the data, 22% of business leaders thought improving the UK's relations with the European Union should be the government's top priority. This figure rises to 32% for business leaders in the finance sector. Some arch-Brexiteers might be annoyed as yet another survey shows the problems that the UK's hard exit from the EU has caused, challenging their bizarrely held beliefs. That said, you get the impression that many of these individuals are still managing to convince themselves that the hard Brexit was a good thing, in spite of the huge amount of evidence to the contrary. Some think it is only a matter of time before the benefits they were promised emerge. However, it is more than 8 years since the Brexit referendum, and it is nearly 4 years since the UK was wrenched out of the European single market by the Boris Johnson administration. What would be very interesting to know is what Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer thinks deep down about the relentless flow of survey results and data highlighting the troubles for the UK economy and businesses caused by the hard Brexit. Sir Keir, we must remember, has essentially embraced the key parts of this hard Brexit delivered by the Tories. By ruling out rejoining not only the EU but also the European single market, Sir Keir is for the foreseeable future depriving the UK of the huge benefits of frictionless trade with its biggest trading partner, which it had until the end of 2020. He is also ensuring that there will be no return of the enormous benefit of free movement of people between the UK and European Economic Area. It is all very well talking warmly about improving relations with the EU. Warmer words are no doubt an improvement on the hostility to the EU from former Conservative ministers and notably from Mr Johnson's chief Brexit negotiator and former Scotch Whisky Association boss, Lord David Frost. And any improvement in relations is better than nothing. However, the cold reality is that what Sir Keir is talking about amounts to mere tinkering around the edges. He has boxed himself in with pledges that sadly mean that there will be no significant alleviation of the Brexit pain for businesses and the economy, or for households and living standards. Sir Keir, who has seemed to have had such a keen eye on those red wall voters who backed Mr Johnson and his hard Brexit in December 2019 general election, has even ruled out rejoining the customs union. And he has rejected the idea of a youth mobility scheme with the EU. So when it comes to the business and economic front, it is important to realise that alleviation of the enormous Brexit damage will not come from Sir Keir's warmer words to the EU or his attempts at tinkering. You wonder whether the Prime Minister ever ponders whether he jumped the gun by ruling out even contemplating rejoining the single market. He was, after all, one of the most eloquent voices arguing against Brexit in late 2019, but has now, when you drill down to the essence of Labour policy on the EU and those demoralising red lines, fully embraced it. This week's survey, and a plethora of others, as well as the economic data and a welter of expert analysis and comment, show the scale of the damage being done by the hard Brexit. It should come as absolutely no surprise to anyone that the European issue is identified as the biggest one for businesses in the Forest Brown poll. What is more, the survey should make uncomfortable reading, not just for the arch-Brexiters, but for convert to the cause Sir Keir, as the Prime Minister continues to fail to wake up to the enormous importance of the European single market membership. That article was by Ian McConnell.
That concludes this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels, review, and to tell your friends about our service.